Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into a super special edition of CTT. That is Chubby Tackle Talk. And the Chubby Boys are here today with a purpose. We are tackling a major issue in that
Yes,
major
we are.
issue. Big G down there, Gorgeous G, is a massive college football fan. He is a major college football fan, played college football. He is our college football expert. But he does not have an NFL team. He has played fantasy football for years. He's loved individual players. But now, as the NIL money rolls into college, his love of college football is diminishing. And he says, well, if they're going to be paid athletes, I want to watch where the big boys play more in the NFL. So we are helping him select an NFL team, and we are doing it as part of our NFL preview for the season coming up. And we are going to start with the oldest and the best, the NFC North. The NFC North, the origins of the NFL, the origins of professional football. And here's how it's going to go. Each week we're going to cover a conference. We're going to preview a conference coming up. We're going to let Graham know about all four teams in that conference. Jansen and I will make our pitches for two teams apiece. Graham will ask will ask questions. We'll cross-examine. And at the end of the episode, he will select one team out of each conference to make it to the finals. And then we will break it down in the finals, and he will select one team for which he will become a loyal fan for the rest of his life. And he will be super heavily involved, more passionate about the NFL now than college football. Unfortunately for him, of course, Alabama, not a professional team anymore. But as we look into the NFL, he's going to find his team and he's going to find his love. So we're going to start it off with the best. That's the NFC North, the oldest conference in football, the origins in the NFL, the first two teams in the NFL right there. And we're going to start off with the number one team in the NFL, the team that's going to win the NFC North, and that's my Chicago Bears. Here's my pitch to you, Graham. Chicago Bears are the oldest team in the NFL. They've got an amazing defense and a dynamic offense coming up. And while they've had some down years over the past couple of years, they're really looking for a resurgence coming forward at this point. They just took the number 1 and the number 9 picks in the NFL draft with new quarterback Caleb Williams and receiver Rome Odunze. And I got to tell you, when you're looking at this offense, it is incredible. They have what is arguably the best tight end room in football right now. And I'm not just talking about an individual tight end. I think that certainly there are better individual tight ends out there. But when you look at the three players that they have in that tight end room, it is absolutely insane. We're talking Cole Kmet, who's a top 10 tight end. Gerald Everett, who's just come over from the LA Chargers, is a top 10 tight end, arguably. They're going to be 1 and 2. And then you've got the veteran who just signed on for a new contract, a new 1-year contract, and has now become the longest playing tight end in the NFL history. Mercedes Lewis, who even caught a touchdown last year, is beginning his 19th season now as a Chicago Bear in that tight end ring. On the other hand, if you look over at the receivers, what an incredible group of receivers, arguably, again, the best wide receiving room in the NFL at this point. You've got DJ Moore, who came over last year from a trade in Carolina, who's a wide receiver 1. Keenan Allen, again, an absolute veteran who continues to do it season in and season out. I would argue that Keenan Allen is the most consistent receiver in the NFL, who's at the receiver 2, receiver 1A. And then the rookie, Rome Odunze, who arguably was one of the best receivers. It was between him, Marvin Harrison, and Malik Neighbors, of course, who were arguing over who would be number 1. Rome actually, I think, had the best stats. And if you look at the quarterback that was throwing to him, I think also did the most with his abilities as well. So you've got an incredible offense coming forward. Caleb Williams is a rookie. He's going to have to grow. He does come from that coaching tree where it was a single read. And you know what is more interesting? They said that some of his struggles in OTAs were coming from the fact that he's been doing a quiet snap cadence for the last 4 years and had not actually had a vocal snap cadence since high school. So he's making some adjustments. But if you're looking for the next superstar quarterback that's going to take over, this is where it comes from. But also, let's talk about the heart and soul of the Chicago Bears, as it always been, which is the Bears are not known for their offense. Before Caleb Williams, arguably their best quarterback was Jay Cutler. But right now, the Bears have always been known for having one of the best and toughest defenses in the league, and last year was no exception. They're coming in this year at the end of last season, the last 5 games, they were a top 6 defense according to scoring. All of those players have returned. They're getting a little bit better. A strong Bear defense is the hallmark of it all. The Bears, by the way, are the second winningest team of all time in the NFL. They've won the second most games of all time, and the history is there. You want history? Nothing is better than the 85 Bears, the Super Bowl shuffle, and the arrogance of that mean defense. We've got more Hall of Famers than anybody else. And my favorite thing of all is you got the fat guy, William the Refrigerator Perry, who used to score the touchdowns, which made me happy as a kid. So, Graham, that's my pitch on the Chicago Bears. And I'm going to tell you the number one thing why you should be a Chicago Bears fan is this: you are already halfway there. Nobody loves the Chicago Bears more than a Bears fan, but also nobody hates the Chicago Bears more than a Bears fan. And I think you already hate them pretty bad. So therefore you're halfway there, buddy. We just got to build the love. That's my pitch for the Chicago Bears, my favorite NFL team, and the soon-to-be NFC North champions, and hopefully NFL Super Bowl champions for years to come.
So I'll start here. This is for life, so I've got to marry into a brand.
You've got to marry into a brand.
Yeah,
and this is
you did a lot. You did a lot of, like, as spoken like a true Bears fan, selling the future before it even happens with all that Caleb Williams stuff.
But it's because the past speaks for itself.
I'm glad you came back to the brand in the 85 Bears. I was hoping to hear a little Jim McMahon, right? It's Jim McMahon.
Absolutely, Jim McMahon.
So I was waiting for that. That would have been a really good sell. But when you went back with 85 Bears in the fridge, I was all in. So that's a good look.
By the way, Mongo McMahon, Steve Mongo, or excuse me, not McMahon, Steve Mongo McMichael. Mongo going into the NFL Hall of Fame this year. One of 2 Bears going to the NFL Hall of Fame. Also, Devin Hester going into the NFL Hall of Fame.
But Bubba, you missed the best pitch of the Bears, and that's the fact that it's the only NFL team with a Saturday Night Live skit.
It is the only NFL team with a Saturday Night Live skit. The Bears.
You missed the biggest one. Mike, there it is. Mike Ditka. I was waiting on Ditka. The Bears.
Hey, I'm also going to throw this out there because of the Saturday Night Live skit. If you are a founding member of the Chubby Tackle Talk podcast, tell me a better Chubby Tackle skit than the Bears.
The Bears.
The Bears. The Bears.
No,
Bears.
but
so that is my pitch for the Bears.
But after that skit, it's really all downhill from there. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, because we've had such. Put it this way: our defenses have been so good. We took Rex Grossman to a Super Bowl.
So let's
made Rex Grossman a Super Bowl quarterback.
Let's keep moving in this NFC North, because the team that we're going to talk about next made their debut in 1961 with a win over those Chicago Bears of 37-13, and that is the Minnesota Vikings. Skol, Vikings, skol. So here's why you're going to love these Vikings, because I know you, and you like a gritty team, a team that fights it out on the line. You're looking at the offensive line, the defensive line trajectory that this team has had throughout the decades, and there's nobody that likes to run the ball more. There's nobody that likes to put them between the tackles. And what does that mean? We've got to have the hog mollies that are worthwhile there. Also with that, 4 Super Bowl appearances, no Super Bowls. We've still got that chip on our shoulder. We know that chip is what drives you, what makes you try to be better. And while we've always had our Adrian Petersons and our amazing running backs, we don't want to forget about some of the quarterbacks and some of the wide receivers we have. Let's not forget, Dante Culpepper was the first dual threat real quarterback that changed the whole dynamic for how we draft and bring quarterbacks into the NFL. Dante Culpepper had who out there to throw to? Randy Moss. Can you think of a better wide receiver in our era than Randy Moss? The era right before him, Chris Carter. Guess who else was a Viking there? And when you look at the person who put the gritty on the map and created the dance that every single TikToker does, the home of Justin Jefferson right now. So let's look at these Minnesota Vikings this year. You know, our one knock, and I'm going to admit to you, we've got J.J. McCarthy that's fighting it out there with Sam Darnold for quarterback. Gee, we know how you feel about Michigan, but look, he's no longer Big Blue. He's a purple people eater. So let's give the boy a chance over there because he's going to be throwing to JJ. He's going to be handing that ball off to Aaron Jones. Hey, thank you, Packers. We appreciate you handing us another running back that can carry on this long tradition. He's going to be tossing that ball around to Hawkinson when he gets back. And if you look at that offensive line, both on size and grit, you're not going to find a better line that you can identify with than those Minnesota Vikings. Let's not forget the defensive side of the ball. Let's not forget the defensive side of the ball. Hanging in the back there, the missile man himself, Harrison Smith, going into like year 13, really that heart and soul of our defense. Continue to have great defensive line. Now, our one gap has been linebackers. We've had some come through there, but we shut down on the secondary. We let our linebackers give a little bit, but that 4-3 that we still run is going further and further away for that 3-4. So come on home to the 4-3. Come on home to the big hog mollies. Come on home to the purple people eaters. And guess what? Purple goes great with your mustache color, because I can't say hair color. So Skull Vikings. Skull.
Arguably one of the greatest war cries in all the NFL, right? So we got to admit that. Funny story, when I was a youth playing youth football, I really enjoyed the Vikings defense and the purple people eaters. And then I was trying to pump up our defense, and it came out the purple Peter eaters, and I've never loved that. Where's the edit button on that one? Hey, but John Randall, one of my all-time favorites. But arguably the Vikings have some of the biggest names coming out of their organization. So I like that. I like that brand. Okay. All right, Bubba, where are we at? Or who's next?
It's me, and I'm going to make a fair sell, but man, I really drew the short straw on this. There's a joke here. So I drew the Packers, and as a Bears fan, the first thing you have to say is FTP, F the Packers. But there's a reason, and it's because it is the longest rivalry in NFL history. You want to talk about the first two teams in the NFL. The first two teams that began it, 1920 Chicago Bears, 1921 Green Bay Packers. And the battle has been going ever since, playing each other multiple times a year ever since. And so if I have to hate on a team, I'm going to hate on the Green Bay Packers. But also, if I have to talk with respect about a rival, I'm going to talk with so much respect about the Green Bay Packers. I hate them, but I hate them because that they are a great rival to have. They took over about 3 years ago and are now the winningest team in NFL history. That's 799 wins to the Bears, 796. We're going to make that difference up. But let me tell you my favorite thing about the Green Bay Packers. It's not just the history. It's not just Vince Lombardi. It's not the incredible quarterbacks that they've unfortunately had that Chicago's never had. I'm talking about Bart Starr, Brett Favre, and even Aaron Rodgers. It's the fact that if you want a true team of the people, it is the Green Bay Packers. And that's because the people own the Green Bay Packers. With the Bears, I don't think you have to worry about the family selling them. I don't think you have to worry about the Hallis family letting them go. I don't think you have to worry about them moving away from Chicago. With other teams, you definitely have to worry about them moving away, as we see every time a new owner comes in and wants to find a better media market. But with the Packers, you know for a fact that they're not going anywhere because they are a publicly owned team. They're held by the fans, owned by the people who own stock certificates in it. If you want to talk stadiums, anytime you want to rank stadiums in the NFL and atmospheres in the NFL, in the top 5, if not the top 3, you've got to talk about Lambeau Field. And you've got to talk about the history of the Lambeau Leap. The Green Bay Packers have a ton of Super Bowls, a ton of history. And you know what? They unfortunately still can't have a down season. We thought that great things were going to happen and they were going to start failing with the loss of Aaron Rodgers. Instead, Jordan Love has come in and has led that team to the playoffs and led them to a playoff victory. And the most incredible thing is it's a team of, quite frankly, somewhat no names. And I'm not saying that as an insult to the Packers. I'm talking about their incredible mentality where you're not having superstar upon superstar. You're not having the Justin Jeffersons, the Christian McCaffreys. You're having just a solid group of players come together and play as a single unit toward the goal of winning games. And while they've had some incredible defenses and some incredible linebackers in the past, they've had arguably the best string of quarterbacks in the history of the game. They keep succeeding and they keep winning as a team. and without focus on those superstar players, but with focus on the team first. And I think that's really the mentality of the people of Green Bay. It's team first, Green Bay first. And you want to talk about another great tradition as opposed to just the Lambeau Leap, the fact that the people on the team, when they start off their fall practices, every year, all the elementary school kids, all the kids come down to the practice, and the players get on their tiny little bikes and ride their tiny little bikes from the practice field over from the locker room back to the practice field, which is always like a fun little thing to watch too. So while I hate them, I respect them. And I think the Green Bay Packers, because of that mentality, because of that history, because of that tradition, and you being an Alabama fan, may be your next step. If you're looking for that tradition and you're looking for that history, the Green Bay Packers might just be the team for you.
Yeah, I think you could have stopped when you said how much you hate the Packers. That's
Yeah,
intriguing enough
yeah. I
to
thought that
me
would
to
be
want to
there. Yeah.
join the brand just to kind of poke at you and knowing that you hate them. But hey, you forgot to mention Reggie White. I mean, let's go there.
Reggie White,
Arguably
absolutely.
the
Let's
GOAT.
talk about at one point my favorite thing was their linebacking core was it was TJ what was the guy's name that went to Ohio State, not TJ Hawk. AJ Hawk. AJ Hawk.
Yeah.
It was AJ Hawk. The linebackers coach was Kevin Green and Clay Matthews. And you would look on the sideline, and the two inside linebackers, Clay Matthews and AJ Hawk with Kevin Green, were just these three long-haired, blonde, bearded Viking. Like, you want to talk about the like Viking-looking guys.
Yeah.
The Green Bay Packers had the most Viking-looking defense I've ever seen in my entire life at that point.
With those neck rolls. They had the massive
giant neck rolls. Like, I think Kevin Green might have been wearing a neck roll at the same. I mean, his traps were just so yoked. Like,
yeah. And
I mean,
the
I was
cheese
so
head,
envious at that point. The
cheesehead merch,
too.
it's solid. And here's the thing about the Bears and your Caleb Williams, like this little thing that they're
Dude,
like
the bear
that.
claw, bear down, baby. Bear claw.
The way it's not like a ferocious claw. He's like with painted fingernails.
What would you rather be in the woods? Wait, what would you rather be in the woods with? A bear or a Packers fan? Wait, don't answer that. Never mind. That's
anyways. Continue, JT.
Oh, that was awesome. All right. So this was the one that we pivoted on because I'm going to start with the history of the Detroit Lions. A team that's been around since the 30s, a team that had success in the 50s, but let's be honest, from the 80s on, a team that was just absolutely horrible, culminating into 2008, where they're the only team that's gone 0-16. While having some amazing players like Barry Sanders back there running the ball. I mean, they've had talent left and right, but a team that was just woefully mismanaged. But not all things stay the same. We saw them waste Barry Sanders. We saw them waste Calvin Johnson. We saw them waste Matthew Stafford, who had to go to the Rams to get a Super Bowl. But much like Detroit, and I've been spending some time in Detroit here recently, if you hadn't been there in a while, it's an amazing city that's on the rise. It's on the rebirth. It's got the energy. It's got the life. And when it comes to football, that all surrounds the coach man himself, Dan Campbell. He's got players running through walls for him. And guess what? They made one heck of a playoff run last year. And he's bringing it back with Jared Goff, a throwaway quarterback who got reignited. We talk about underdogs, somebody that they said, we will pay to get this guy going. We want him off our roster. They're coming in with running backs that give you a scat back and someone straight up the middle there with David Montgomery, and coming out there with Jahmyr Gibbs out on the side. They've got wide receivers in the Sun God himself, who is one of the grittiest wide receivers in the league right now. Love the way that guy plays, and maybe the future of tight end. I mean, our rookie tight end right there, absolutely looking stellar this past year on almost all fantasy counts. Going to be the number one tight end in the league next year. But let's not just stop right there on offense, because they've got a lot going on there. But they really, like many teams, like any team that wants to go deep in the playoffs, they're building it around that defense. They're building it around a great secondary. They've got some linebackers that want to fight. They've got defensive linemen that want to run through the walls. But man, I'm just going to keep going back to attitude, because it reminds me of one of those teams. I think a little bit back to the Bills. You think about those teams where you're like, you really don't have superstars, but you have a lot of stars. You have everyone pulling their weight, doing their job, working and pulling in one direction. And I'm just going to double down on our man, Dan Campbell, who just really, he comes into those meetings and I'm ready to run through the TV for him. And again, I'm a Vikings fan. We don't like the Lions. We're not pulling for them. We don't want the Lions to win. They're an 0-16 team. They're the bag over your head team. But if you love a good American underdog story, it's hard not to get excited for some Lions football right now.
Well,
yeah, that's go ahead, Bubba.
No, I was just going to say, JT, I think you make a great selling point for the team, but I think your best selling point, and just for an out, like if we're talking about different elements, like if we're talking about history, I think Bears and Packers are definitely something that are teams that you have to consider, and there are going to be other teams that we hit up. If we're talking about other factors, cheerleaders, Bears don't have cheerleaders, by the way. Vikings have some good looking cheerleaders, so that may be something you want to look at. But if we're talking about general managers, I mean, my God, you cannot argue with what Ryan Poles is doing. If you're talking about head coaches, if you're talking about wanting to get behind a head coach, I've got to tell you, I'm with you. Dan Campbell is someone that inspires me. He's somebody that you look at that guy and you look at what his players are doing. I have so much respect for what he has done in Detroit. I have so much respect for that guy as a coach. I'm rooting for him. I don't know that I'm ever going to root for the Lions, but I'm going to say this. I'm rooting for him. I hope they lose to the Bears twice a year. I'm rooting for him, though. I think he's an incredible coach, but coaches go away.
Well, I was going to say that's the big downside is what happens when Campbell goes away.
Well, okay. So I'll give you some closing thoughts, and then I've got to make a selection, right? I've got to advance.
Yes, you do.
I got to advance one.
One.
You got to advance one out of this conference.
So you've all made very compelling cases, and I feel like we're a mix between rich history and those that are on the rise. Challenge with those that are on the rise is the rise could be short-lived, and we all know that marrying into this, and I've got to buy the brand. So history and heritage and tradition is weighing pretty stellar in that. So I think I can quickly eliminate two of these. Unfortunately, guys, it's the Vikings and the Bears just because you cheer for them. That's the only reason, because I can't cheer for a team that you guys cheer for.
We didn't want you.
Okay. Respect.
It's okay. We didn't want
so
you
respect.
Anyway.
So no knock on your team. I've always had a special place in my heart for the Detroit Lions just because I love Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders was the first NFL football game I ever saw. Seeing him run was amazing. When I played in college, we played Georgia Tech against Calvin Johnson, and meeting him was, quite frankly, one of the biggest. I've never seen anybody that big of a freak athlete. So that was a cool experience. So I always cheered for him, and I always had him on my fantasy team. The only fantasy championship that I've won included Calvin Johnson. So there's a place for the Detroit Lions. And then let's talk the Packers. Arguably the greatest history. You got to love the frozen tundra. You got Detroit blue collar mentality. You got Green Bay blue collar mentality. When it all comes into play, I've always been the underdog. I don't want to be the underdog anymore. So I'm eliminating Detroit. We're going to advance Green Bay. Green Bay moves on in the NFC North.
I'm not sure if this is a win or a loss for Bubba.
I don't know. That's what I have mixed emotions right now.
I told you.
I don't know how I feel right now.
I almost told Bubba to say less when he said, I hate the Packers FTP. I was like, say less. That's my team. Like, advance them.
I love it. That's awesome. All right.
I love it. I'm glad that you're telling us also, and I think it's helpful. We're both trying to preview the season and talk about what's happening coming up in the season, but also, I think it's important to dive into the history of these teams, the mentality of the teams, and the traditions of these teams. And I'm glad that you're asking us those questions so that you can get the information going forward. So it is official. Real quick, we're all going to pick, just so you know, when we talk about who is going to win the NFC North this time, I'm picking the Bears. I think,
Vikings.
Jansen, you're picking the Vikings. Graham, you're now picking the Packers. And so, we've got a diverse interest.
And we're going to all be
NFC
wrong because the Lions are going to actually win it.
But we're all picking Dan Campbell for coach. It's
hey, not to be confused with Dave Campbell, as I said in an earlier episode.
Not to be confused with Dave.
Yeah.
But so it is official. The Green Bay Packers have moved on to the next round. Next week we're going to come in and cover a difference conference. We're gonna make our pitch for those teams. Graham's going to pick one out of there, and we're going to continue until we cover all 32 NFL teams. He narrows his 8 down to 1 and proclaims his fandom. So pretty soon, one team will have one new fan, and we are excited to follow along with it. For the boys at this time, bear down, Skull, and FTP, we are out.
Out.
Out.